So hello everybody, welcome to conversation number 3 of Architecture Talk Tank with Sara Kolata. Today I have an incredible guest I'm very excited to present to you. It's Elinor Moshe from Australia. Hey Elinor.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for joining me. So basically, what I've been doing and trying to create with these publications is to kind of explore subjects of digitalization in architecture and the construction industry. So I'm an architect myself, but I've been working with architects to help them create online courses. And this is like a publication medium for me to kind of explore ideas of how the architecture industry that is very traditional can actually transition into digital. And so I speak to experts such as Elinor, who actually helps contractors specifically, right?
Construction industry professionals and future leaders.
Exactly. And you do consulting, but also what is really fascinating for me is how you use digital marketing to build your brand. So I'll let you introduce yourself because I know you do it best.
Thank you, Sarah. Wonderful introduction. My name is Elinor Moshe and I am the founder of The Construction Coach. It's a platform that is really for future leaders and industry professionals to really attain recognition, compensation, and faster career progression. And digitalization of your personal brand is just one component of that. But I've really been able to build my authority and positioning in the marketplace through two essential platforms, LinkedIn and Instagram. Of course, there are a lot of back-end platforms such as mailing lists and websites, but the power of these tools has been phenomenal to my career growth, even before I became the prolific person that I am today. Engaging with these platforms was always imperative. So it served as a runway to where I am today, which is an ambitious and driven leader in the Australian construction industry, and hopefully after this interview, the German one as well.
That's excellent. Yes, welcome, of course, to this market. So I find it really fascinating actually to see professionals transition and go through this process of transitioning into digital, because the means of your message and marketing as well as sale is a little bit different, and that process, and I think that it takes a lot to understand that realm, but also to actually prepare yourself as an individual to step into that journey. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your personal story and what got you to actually decide to become a thought leader and to be the person that basically serves also a higher market through using the digital platforms such as internet.
It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? It started when I finished my master's degree in 2017. I finished in 2016, but in 2017, I all of a sudden had a lot of time on my hands. And I'm someone who I always need more. Doing one thing, whether that's just my job or just this, is not sufficient for me. I love having many different moving parts to my life. So I immediately went out into the market and started tutoring students in their degrees, whether construction or property. But very quickly, those conversations would turn from a technical based conversation as to how concrete and precast and everything goes together into a mentoring type of conversation. And I saw there were a lot of commonalities in the student experience. I also saw a lot of the commonalities in the management experience. So people in the 5 to 10 years, not just 0 to 5 year career in construction. So it was April last year, and it was the Easter break. And when I have time and space on my hands, that is when I have a lot of downloads from the universe. So it was 11 o'clock at night and I had the idea, The Construction Coach. I wanted to come up with a platform where I could answer these questions that were common, but for many more people. Because if I had them once upon a time, and the people who I was interacting with on a weekly basis also have the same questions, there has to be an audience for this. So how could I actually reach as many people as possible? So the construction coach first started off as a weekly blog, a space for me to write and share insights and learnings and answer these questions. And the readership just grew very quickly. First of all, there was nothing else like this in the Australian market, and there still isn't. And the blog was gaining a lot of traction. And even people that weren't actively engaging on my content, when I would meet them in real life via speaking engagements, they would say, I read your blog, I love it, it's helped me in X, Y, Z. And to fast forward the story, that my business has turned into a private mentoring service, as well as events and a podcast. So it's evolved very quickly because I've also been able to see what people need, and that's been via creating a community and connecting with the global audience via Instagram and LinkedIn.
That's excellent. I mean, I really admire this because I know that to develop into all of those different aspects of yourself, also as like a business going digital, it takes a lot from like the readiness that you feel within to do. So I think you're doing a great job with your branding, with the way you position yourself. You look beautiful. You have a really strong message, and but I know that it's not always easy. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the roadblocks you found on the way, and perhaps certain insecurities or difficulties that were and that you had to overcome to be who you are today.
Every journey has that, absolutely, and it all starts
Exactly.
with the mindset development. I find that people automatically go to the tactical. They want to learn how to use the tool, how to hack the LinkedIn algorithm, how to hack the Instagram algorithm, and you can learn that immediately. It's not what's going to make or break you, it's the mindset piece that has to actually be developed first. So part of my personality is that I have always been someone that when I set my mind to something, I go for it. I don't see the barriers, I see the reward, I see the opportunity, and I have very little care or tolerance, for lack of a better word, of what people think, because 95% of the world's population doesn't actually think. They're not aware that they have a level of consciousness. So that isn't going to stop me. But of course, there are elements of friction when you are starting to put yourself online. And the first video that I did, I was fearful. I was very self-conscious. I was thinking, what will people think? What will people say? Who does she think she is? All those common thoughts that we get when we want to position ourselves and when we want to put ourselves out there. And usually when you find yourself thinking of what will this person think, you're actually thinking of one or two people. And then you have to think to yourself, why does this opinion of this person have so much agency and weight over me? When you break that down, you realize that it doesn't. No one else should have that much agency or have a weighted opinion about you that will stop you from what you are trying to do. So coming through that rationalization, but as well, really understanding that I am on a mission. I've tapped into something. I am loving what I am doing. And I find that from the energy that I get when I am in this zone of creating and in the business zone. And people need this message. It's not about me anymore. It is about my community. It is about my audience. And when you don't make it about yourself, but you know that your content is there to serve other people, that your service is there to serve other people and create transformations, light bulb moments, and to expand their worldview, what the minority will think absolutely becomes irrelevant.
Exactly. And I think that you've covered some really important points. I just find that a lot of people perhaps find it a little bit difficult to really step up as individuals representing their business. I think that in architecture industry, we create such beautiful projects and they're so grand that it's easy to hide yourself behind the project. And I would really love to see people come forth a little bit more as individuals, so that these companies and thought leaders out there become a little bit more approachable. Because at the end of the day, as humans, we connect more with the human aspect, not per se with the facade. And in this particular case, it would be a facade of a building. So I just feel sometimes that in the construction and architecture industry, there is this like a difficulty to find certain projects, companies, or individuals approachable. And the idea of exploration, what thought leadership really means and how it can benefit the construction, engineering, and the architecture industry, is very much of interest to me. And I wanted for you to perhaps elaborate a little bit more on it. How do you see that architects and builders and constructors and engineers could benefit from actually becoming thought leaders and stepping forward as individuals?
Well, it starts with, just to touch on a previous point that you mentioned, it becomes easy or easier to put yourself out there when you know exactly who you are, when you know your message, when you know to the absolute macro and micro, to the absolute minutia, who you are. And that takes work. That is a project within itself. But the issue is that people don't actually spend the time and the money to figure this out. It has nothing to do with your favorite colors or what you like to eat for dinner. That is superficial. Who you are is about your values, your purpose, your passion. It is a loaded conversation, and it does take, as I said before, time and money to figure out. But that is part of the thought leadership process, is when you are leading with a leading edge idea based on who you are. And I love this because we are so unique. There is no one else on the planet like us, but there are projects that can easily be replicated. Job titles can be replicated. You are not your job title. There is a huge issue in professionalism where people tie their identity to their job title. And then what happens when that job disappears? They have no idea who they are all of a sudden, or if that project maybe isn't as successful, they tie their success to the success of the project. But it's really nothing about that. And that's what I love about thought leadership as a very modern form of leadership, which suits the social age, is that, like I said before, it's about who you are. And you said it as well. People tie their beliefs, their abilities, and their vision to a person. That is what we connect with. And especially now in the social age where there are so many people out there, what's going to actually help you stand out? It is who you are, but you can only do that if you figure that out. And thought leadership is also based on not just who you are, but it's about having a leading edge idea in which you can create impact, influence, and income from if you wanted. So for industries such as architecture, construction, and engineering, which are very problem solution based industries, but acquire not conventional, conservative, because of the high risk profiles. I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but here it is very conservative. You're nodding, yes. There is high risk and it's a heavy industry to move forward. Something like thought leadership is really required in order to propel the industry forward and to make sure that the industry can be disrupted in a way that will actually create sustainable change and benefit all the people involved.
Yes, that's true. And essentially, would you elaborate a little bit more? I just really kind of curious to hear what is the real outcome of why would people want to become thought leaders, a part of, you know, finding their why and a part of creating a social disruption. Would there be a benefit for their business, for example?
Absolutely, because your business is a byproduct of who you are, but people will then, this is who you are, people will by default be drawn to your business. Case in point, you discovered me first, not the construction coach, but by default having that business, which is an extension of my brand and my message, it just makes sense. This is what I'm about. You understand it clearly. You can talk about it for me. And that is the beauty of thought leadership, is that your business is an extension of who you are, not you are a byproduct of your business. And if that business disappears, so do you. So it is really a unique way of putting yourself out there. But thought leadership, really, it can be for everyone. It can be learned. It is an art and a science, but you have to put yourself out there. All of it, all of you gets revealed, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that puts you up for criticism, for lack of a better word. And that's what actually renders people out of the game, because they can't handle the criticism. But as part of the work to become a thought leader, you know very particularly who your audience is and who you are here for, and everything else really doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. So what makes a thought leader then? Like actual practical steps in terms of how to become one?
It's for me, it's a year-long course with a world-class thought leader. It is a very detailed process. It does start with idea formulation. It goes into figuring out who you are, and later on it moves into the more tactical type of elements, such as LinkedIn, having podcasts, and having content that is created around your message, having businesses that are creating around your message. It goes into absolute detail of knowing who your target market is, not just where they live and what they work, but actually profiling these people, who they are, what is your message, and how are they going to find you? How are they going to benefit from this? And also what transformations you want to cause in their business or their life. But that's, again, somewhat tactical. The piece that really makes or breaks is the mindset development. It's understanding human psychology, and architecture to some extent is a response to human psychology. It understands really well how people operate through built environments, what people need, what people, what architects want people to feel when they are experiencing a certain space. So by default, architects are already leading the human experience via creating spaces, and those spaces then elicit people to have very specific thoughts and feelings, which is also what thought leadership is about. So it's a perfect match when you think about it.
Yeah, it's true. It is. So I'm just interested what inspires you. Where do you find your own inspiration?
I'm someone who is always about the more. I love doing more. I'm not someone who, if I'm at this level, I'm always looking for the next level and the next level, because I know that as individuals, we have infinite potential. The only limitations that we have is this physical outline of a body, and then plus we can't fly and we can't defy gravity. But when we look inside, we are infinite in our ability to create and to impact others for the better, whatever that better is, that is tied with your message. And one of my core operating principles is achievement. I love achieving, and society doesn't necessarily promote high achievers. It actually wants you to maintain the status quo. People struggle with that. But throughout my journey, I've discovered that's one of, like I said, core operating principles. And it's what always motivates me. I'm always looking for how I can do more and the next, but not just for me. I figured out how to do this. I'm able, through different frameworks, programs, and events, and of course the thought leadership framework, to get other people to do the same, to see what's possible. And quite frankly, it's anything. And when people start lifting their own ceilings, you feel expansive. And that feeling is indescribable to some extent, but it is what I love doing. And I do that through, like I said, it's the private mentoring, it's the events, it's the podcast, it's content creation, it's blogging, it is all sorts of things. And I'm excited to say that I'm only just getting started.
That's excellent. Do you have an advice of a book, perhaps, or a podcast that you listened to or read recently that inspired you?
My own podcast, does that count?
That counts, of
Actually,
course.
well, my podcast is called Constructing You, but a book or a podcast, I'm an avid consumer of all of those things. The one podcast that really had the most impact on me, that really primed my mind, that allowed me to get ready once an opportunity came around, it's called For the Love of Money by Chris Harder. And he interviews people who, again, had an awakening or an idea to start a business, and through all trials and tribulations, they succeeded immensely. But the premise of the podcast is, when good people make good money, they do great things. So it's about giving and generosity. And I really love that, because I do have that ambition. But before you can help other people, you need to fill your own cup first. So that podcast was absolutely expansive for my mindset, my money mindset, understanding money and business and generosity. And books that were impactful, Secrets of a Millionaire Mind, that was fantastic. I recently consumed David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. He's a Navy SEAL, and his life is anything but anything but easy, for lack of a better word. He's had every brick, stone thrown at him, but he has achieved and not just triumphed, but thrived in superhuman levels. And that's been absolutely inspirational in the truest sense. It absolutely moved me. And of course, I really liked Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. That's a classic. But there are many,
Absolute classic.
yeah, but there are many books and podcasts that have served me throughout different stages of my life and career. But I do like certain classics. And at the moment, I'm reading Extreme Ownership. It's about how US Navy SEALs lead and win, which is really closely tied to my ethos. So I'm enjoying that at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Honestly, I just feel really inspired by this conversation. I think that what really touched me was how you spoke about that level of raising the roof, and then really turning yourself into someone who gives value, and then seeing when people receive that value, how in turn it makes you feel again, and how expansive and worthy of that feeling is. And I think it's just a beautiful incentive to start that journey of thought leadership. And I really feel that there is endless opportunities in that field for every single business. And I would love to see more of architects really stepping up and leading through their thought, through their major research, through their message, so that it doesn't just land in libraries or in, as PhD papers, but it really gets shared, because that exact why that you spend most of your life exploring is something that can motivate other people. And I feel that a lot of times, unfortunately, in our industry, that lifelong work ends up just on the shelf in the library. And I definitely had people, architects, that have inspired me to make major decisions in my life and in my career, because what they did was accessible to me. I could see their work, I could see their decision-making process, and also vulnerability, perhaps. And that's what really encouraged me to step into that game. But there also have been individuals that I felt really unattainable, and I couldn't figure out how could I ever get there, or how could I, it just felt kind of hard to touch. And so it's disencouraging. It feels disconnected from it. And so I really loved how you elaborated more on that way of the sort of the journey that you go through within, and the value, the providing of value, and how that can impact your community, and also really to get that knowledge out there and have more people find out about it, share it, get inspired by it, and create a community around that. So just to wrap up, I wonder if you have any other advice, or perhaps want to elaborate more on your message. You shared so much beautiful thoughts with me today, with all of us. But just like last words of advice or suggestion from you.
It's what I would probably tell most people in this scenario is do the work that's required, because it is work, it is time, but what's the alternative? To let the time go by and you still haven't shared your value with the world, that's a loss to humanity, whatever that is. So just do the work, but it has to start within, because we live from the inside out, and that internal work is really what's going to propel you forward, wherever that will be. So I highly recommend that that's what people do.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. Actually, Brian McCartney, that I recently interviewed, has
Yes,
given
we
me great.
connected.
I'm happy to know. Yes, amazing. So he's given me a really good advice. He told me done is the new perfect, and
Yeah,
I wrote it down. It's just right here, and I see it every single day as I sit at my desk. And I think that a lot of a lot of us suffer from perfectionism, and we always feel like something is not quite ready and not quite perfect to get out there. But yeah, done is the new perfect.
it's Sheryl Sandberg's message as well. But the more of that you do, you're able to see what works and what doesn't. And then you're able to get it done and get it done perfectly. I'm all about superior standards and superior performance. There does come a time when you have to surpass what you did this time last year, and you find you will get it done and it will be perfect. But you have to start. One of my favorite quotes is the best way to get ahead is to get started. So again, get started.
Exactly. And it does also take time to find your real message and your voice. And I also heard concepts about how you need to publish your first 100 podcasts or 100 blog posts, or hundreds of any publication to really truly find your voice within all of it. Sometimes you will elaborate on things that maybe you've been exploring, but you didn't quite adapt it. And then other times it will give you an opportunity also to adapt certain thoughts that you will stand for. And I think that it's a journey, really. You won't just know it all from the start, but you've got to start.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really love this conversation and connecting with you, and it was so insightful and beautiful. Really, I love how you lead through your heart, and I think that the world needs more leaders like this. It's very inspiring, and I wish you all the best on the journey. I hope we connect soon again to cover some more subjects on thought leadership and maybe the next steps, because I know we discussed it already, and I think that people that are indeed interested in starting that journey might have a lot of questions, and we're willing to cover those subjects. So I invite you all the listeners, to stay tuned and follow also Constructing You podcast and Elinor Moshe.